Wow. All right. Hello, world. Okay. Tonight's featured readers is we have Carey Taylor and Connie Soper. And I'm going to introduce them first, and then they'll come up one after the other. Connie finds inspiration while hiking or beachcombing. Her poems have received recognition from the Oregon Poetry Association, Calyx, and then Neahkane Poetry Prize. Publications include Catamaran, Canary, Cider Press Review, One Art, Willowa Journal, and elsewhere. Her first full-length of poetry, A Story Interrupted, published by Airlie Press in 2022, celebrates walking and witnessing her native terrain. And then following Connie, we're going to have Carey Taylor. And Carey is the author of Some Aid to Navigation and The Lure of Impermanence. She is the winner of the 2022 Neahkane Mountain Poetry Prize, a pushcart prize, and Best of the Net nominee, runner-up for the Concrete Wolf Lewis Poetry Book Award, and has had her poems curated both nationally and internationally. She has a master's degree in school counseling from Pacific Lutheran University. Carey has lived her entire life in the Pacific Northwest, has a rare childhood of experience of living in 3 lighthouse stations. She lives in Portland, Oregon. So here is first Connie and then Carey.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for the invitation to come and read here today. As Mark mentioned, I find inspiration from hiking and being on the beach, so some of my poems are going to reflect that. I also write a lot about my heritage and different places where I've lived, so I'm going to read a couple of poems about that. Some are from my book that was published by Airlie Press, and some are more recent. So I'm going to start off by reading a couple of books related to my heritage. My great-grandmother emigrated from Iceland, and my brothers and I decided to make a heritage trip to Iceland to see if we could find where she had lived. And we had planned that trip for 2020, which, for obvious reasons, didn't happen. But what I did do was I found an online tour of Iceland, and I wrote a poem about that called Virtual Nostalgia. Go ahead, fly from a chair, navigate your laptop over the blue lagoon, above massive ancient glaciers to the sharp bite of a waterfall. Watch from your living room as the Aurea Borealis greens Arctic skies. Drone cameras zoom over the thatched roof, farmhouses to spy on the sheep, goats, and wild caribou. Down, down, hovering above cities, streets, houses where people like you eat breakfast of smoked herring, yogurt, and coffee. You long for it, like a melancholic music rousing the ghosts of your ancestors. Oh, sure, ice caps are melting there, too. Winter's long and bleak, the cost of beer and bread. A word for watching weather through windows. Glugafordur. Say it. Download yourself to stand at the coordinates of brisk and briny, where citizens wear eyes the color of a robin's egg. Whales breaching, volcanoes smoldering over their rims. You, descending into Reykjavik, return to a place you've never been, like a hand you've always held, a face you've always known. And then I actually did go to Iceland the year after that, and this poem was written about that experience. A brief history. We all come from somewhere, birthed with stories to tell. Mine a saga of umlauts and vowels, a voyage begun by sailing adrift. My ancestors stayed at the source of that mistake, crafting shelter from turf, thatched roof, a window for looking out to a climb of horizontal rain, wind bending anything rooted, the silence of snow, the shape of ice, green aura and the night sky. Those women, salted herring, skinned rabbits, found use for it all. Bone, meat, sinew, and pelt. They survived plague and barren tundra, the boredom of waiting for seasons to unfold, for earth to soften into a thaw. Fish running again, the whole world like a smile without a face. Today, I tour those old turf houses, heritage sites not so far from Reykjavik, walk into claustrophobic rooms with low ceilings, fire pit, pens where animals slept. Timelines on the walls span centuries of kings and treaties, bishops and battles, a brief history of the long lineage from then to now, from them to me. I look out the same window to the same home of fire and fury my people saw, the awful beauty that would not be tamed. And I just want to mention that I got to know Carey through a class we took online, and I got to know her through her poetry, and we discovered we had some things in common, including that we had both spent some pivotal childhood years living on the Oregon coast and some small towns there. I had lived as a child in Coos Bay, and she lived near there too. And so I'm going to read a poem I wrote about living there as a child. Ode to the way it was before. Praise what is no longer there. Backyard alleys before they were paved, before the cul-de-sacs and strip mall. Bless the bicycles that navigated potholes, puddles, and ruts as we pedaled through alleys lined with hedges no one bothered to trim. Praise the slough of salt mud, where we scooped pollywogs into mason jars, then let them go. Praise, too, the exuberant mayhem of blackberry sprawling along the banks of brackish water, nest of thorns, bramble refusing to be tamed. Praise the blue-collar streets radiating from four-way stops like spokes on a wheel. Elroy and Ingersoll, Empire and Flanagan. Hallelujah for our fathers' jobs, for the men who drove those streets to the graveyard shift on sea-blown docks, to the sawmill next to the tracks. Praise the secret places we invented, sanctuaries of our imagination, backyard blanket forts, fairy beds of moss. The streets are a playground those long summer nights until voices from front porches called us home. Okay, and here's a poem in the spirit of sticking to my ancestors about my grandmother, who was married to one of the children that of the great-grandmother from Iceland, who emigrated to North Dakota. And she had 12 children, one of whom was my grandfather. And this is about my grandmother, called Dried Flowers. My grandmother perfected the art of pressing flowers, collecting them the way some people gather stamps from countries they've never been. Edelweiss from Austria, Scottish bluebells, red poppies that once blazed slopes in Santorini. She ordered the rare and exotic from catalogs, and when they arrived, wrapped in tissue paper, she stuck them in encyclopedia pages next to the places they came from, cheek to jowl with national monuments, presidents, and kings. When the blossoms were dried and flat and brittle, she glued them onto velvet, arranged into shapes of gardens and bouquets, boats sailing on an aqua sea. Once, with nothing but a backpack and lust for wander, I hiked alpine meadows, the highlands and moors, where wildflowers perfumed in abundance next to the paths. With the purity of youth, I left the blossoms rooted, did not pick them, not even for her. Now that I am as old as she was then, I think of my grandmother hunched over her table, surrounded by dried flowers, peering through a magnifying glass at their fine markings, delicate whorls and patterns only nature could create. She was happiest there, surrounded by flora from so many places. She let the world come to her, with all its tiny blue flowers, fiddlehead ferns, the soft-petaled pansies that grew in her own backyard. Okay, I'm going to move into some of my hiking poems. Yeah, I wrote this book called Exploring the Oregon Coast Trail, and I had the experience of hiking the entire length of the Oregon coast, and it inspired a lot of my poetry, and vice versa too. I think that I paid more attention to poetic language as I was trying to describe the beauty of the coast and what some of these trails are like. So this first poem I'm going to read is one of the hikes on the Oregon Coast Trail, called Amanda's Trail. Some of you may have heard of it. It's near Yachats, and it's named after a Native American woman who had been forcibly removed from her home and forced marched to a camp, a reservation near Yachats. And this trail was named for her, and there's a sanctuary there now in her honor that's really worth going to see if you have a chance when you're in Yachats. Amanda's Trail. It was her way to embrace circles of seasons in an abundance of bulbs, roots, berries, to harvest mussels in the low and salty estuary, until she became a refugee in her own homeland. It was her way to lay the dead in canoes hung from branches, always facing west. Those boats would sway in the breeze as souls rode into the next world. Which of us wouldn't enter eternity like that? It was her way to leave gifts for that long journey, basket, knife, blanket, until those gifts were stolen for souvenirs. It was her way to trust the shaman until the diseases came and there were no more living to tend to the dying. Today, we lace our boots and ready packs to step into the forest's ripe and sudden smells on the flanks of Cape Perpetua. The same cliffs, chasms, streams, rocks, the same churning waves in the distance. The path before us curves like the parentheses of history. We can't see its end as we cross over a bridge, traverse switchbacks, follow twisting trail, to pause at a knoll overlooking the expansive sea. Cedars press green spirit weave against the sky, dappled with light, rooted in darkness. And this one's called January. Gray whales have migrated south, singing their way into Baja's lagoons. Calving now, they renew their enormous kind. It's the season of king tides and a blood moon, of fleece coats and wool caps. Trees etch a darker horizon, bare but for branches clothed in moss, sentries at the gateway of town. Windshield wipers syncopate a slower rhythm. Puddles reflect the sky, the upside of looking down. The village settles into the comfort of its own bones, shaking the final dregs of summer. Lamps are lit in old cottages along the ridge. Beach umbrellas hibernate in sheds, and the bright flame of crocosmia is extinguished. Locals have returned to the cafe, knocking wet sand from their boots. Not much to spend here but time, those precious coins spilling freely. Winter's sun unlocks a softer light over a scrub of seagrass and low dunes, over the long sleeve of shore. 3 miles to the jetty, uninterrupted but for creeks ending their journey. Dogs run unleashed. Spray of salt, frost on sand, prospect of a proper storm. Okay, one more that's also a beach poem. And it is called The Tide Pools at Haystack Rock. Here, at the edge of enormous waters, we've come to celebrate the minuscule, tiny life revealed when waves recede. Marine gardens flowering sea moss, grasses rinsed in a salt bath. Starfish color the pools purple and orange, as if reflecting a summer sunset. We watch them cling to barnacled rocks as they wait for returning rhythms of the tide. Inside those little pockets of life, anemones open and close their primitive mouths. We wonder if they can see us, if they fear us. We wonder if they feel the quiet pulse of home. We wonder if they know the end of our world is the beginning of theirs. Thank you. Turn it over to Carey.
Okay, can you get this for my height, Mark? How's that? Everyone hear me okay? Last time I was with you, Mark, it was really windy. Do you remember that? We were out south at some church clear out southeast.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember? And the wind was blowing. Somebody from the audience had to run up and put a bobby pin in my hair because my hair just kept falling in my face. Anyway, thank you for inviting us, Mark. I'm going to read to you tonight from my new book, Some Aid to Navigation. This came out in September with Moon Path Press, if you're familiar with Alana and her wonderful press. And I noticed that, in my bio, we mentioned lighthouses. That's the first lighthouse I ever lived in on the cover of my book. It's at Point Wilson in Port Townsend. So I was really happy to find that artwork with that particular lighthouse on it. What's this up here for, Mark?
That's just in case rain comes.
Okay. I'm going to get rid of it here for a minute.
Play some cards.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I need more room, so. My book is, this book is different than my first book. My first book, if anything got published, it got put in the book because I was so thrilled anything got published because I just started writing. And so it's kind of like someone said, you're I wouldn't call it greatest, but that first mixed tape that you get. This book was more concept book. I knew I had a story to write. I knew I'd grown up in an unusual situation with my father in the Coast Guard and me living at the lighthouses that he was in charge of. And I also knew that I loved the place that I grew up, the Northwest, and my family and the place changed after my childhood, and I needed to tell that story. So the book really became a long narrative. And so the first section starts off with a quote from Edward Lear, who was my favorite poet as a child. They went to sea in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they went to sea. Birth announcement. Let's begin with my feet. 10 proper toes, pressed into pink ink, then pressed again on one side of a small card. 2 tender roadies, determined to root in the heavy dark of a Port Orford winter. The first question my father asked the nurse is not, is it a boy or girl, but is everything okay? When she answers yes, his fear unwinds like coiled rope after drop of anchor. As he drives from hospital to home, he looks at my face in the cardboard box between himself and my mother. He thinks I look like his sister Georgie, whose old crib he has repainted and is the newest piece of furniture he owns. At 22, what he doesn't know yet is that the 36-footer moored at the boathouse in Nellie's Cove has sprung a slow leak. What he doesn't know yet is that he will try every life-saving trick he has learned to keep both girl and boat afloat. How many of you have been to Port Orford? How many of you been to the Lighthouse Museum there? Connie's it? Well, when you go there sometime, you should stop. That boat is still there at the museum, and it is now a historical. They didn't make very many of those 36-foot wooden boats, and it's been restored, and it's still there. So if you get a chance, take a look at it. This poem is, the place is Charleston, as I'll mention in the poem, which is right by where Connie lived in Coos Bay, little fishing community close to Coos Bay. And the reason I'm going to read this is I've realized the last years of my life how often when I open the news, there's something about Russia in it. And I started thinking about how often Russia has been in the background of my life since I was a child. And anyone who's my age maybe has had that similar experience. This poem is titled War Play. And it starts out with an epigraph. Well, boys, I reckon this is it. Nuclear combat, toe to toe with the Ruskies. From Dr. Strangelove. Suddenly, it is 1966, and I am playing with the neighborhood kids in the front yard in Charleston, Oregon. Keeping us safe up there. Usually I am at the beach where the wind tangles my hair in knots. Usually I'm riding my horse through the crow-dark forest. Sometimes I ride my bike past a chain-link fence that surrounds the naval base where someone listens for Soviet subs under all that ocean. Sometimes I pick up peacock feathers in my neighbor's pasture or practice duck and cover at school. Always, I hear the clanging of the American flag as it is raised and lowered on the white metal pole outside my bedroom window. But this day, I am hiding behind the west corner of our large white house, nestled between cedar siding and a wild fuchsia. We rock, paper, scissors to see who is the enemy. Bored from so much waiting, I spray water on my boots from a plastic pistol, suck nectar from the fuchsia's pink and purple flowers, keep an eye on the boy behind the trunk of a tilting pine. When I make my move, he screams to the soldiers on his side, "The Russians are coming! The Russians are coming!" And to this day, I read the newspaper, and that's what we read. So life is strange. The second section of the book is starts with a quote from a man called Glenn Albrecht. He's a researcher that lives in Australia and coined the term solastalgia. Have you heard of that word? Well, this is what it means. It's the homesickness you have when you are still at home because your lived environment is changing in ways you find distressing. My father leaves on Mother's Day. I remember best the call at work, tossing my apron into a lettuce box, driving past the moldy green single-wide next to the creek, the rusted cars and chickens in the Crawford's yard, Scotch broom, the color of egg yolk bordering our driveway, the soft puddle of my mother in bed. I remember somehow loading her into the Chevy Vega, driving into the city on unfamiliar streets, walking into the emergency room of an unfamiliar hospital, the heavy door, a word above the door, psychiatric. I remember best floating back past field and fence, the quiet, dark house, calling for the outside dog, taking his flea-ridden body into bed with me. And this poem is called, it was kind of what this section is, Soul Nostalgia. This book came out in 2024, but this poem was published before that. And it was about the time that the fires were, ramping down the gorge. Pacific Northwest bakes. Starburst this fine bluebird day. Sometimes violence isn't bruise or blood. Sometimes it's a whale pushing her dead calf through once cool waters. Sometimes it's the droop of dahlias in our grandmother's garden, missing the scurry of earwigs in our summer bouquets. Red moon, red sky, red sun, and nowhere to run. Sometimes it's a teenager chucking fireworks down the gorge or smoky ash on playgrounds where children cough Red Rover. Sometimes it's a mega block broiling our bones, combusting on the shore of our careless days. Do you remember? Once, twice, beneath damp cedars, long lash of seal in sun-green kelp, incoming tide on our tongues. Okay, and I'm going to read one more from this. That wasn't me, was it? Possible. And then I'll read two new poems. This poem got published just before the book came out in a press called Empty House Press. And I just want to say this is in the third section of the book, and the third section is coming into peace with what I recognize were a lot of losses and a lot of grievances that I'd never expressed or talked about. And so the beauty of writing, I think, is getting to the point where you can become empathetic with yourself and empathetic with the people that may have hurt you. So that's what the third section of the book is. But this poem is called, huh? Oh, hello. Did they want to talk to me? Oh, okay. Praise the childhood of borderless roaming. Who can say what catches the eye? It might have been the golden light in my hair or the sheen of moisture on my forehead. It might have been the slow pump of my legs on her backyard swing, or the furs fading from green to black. But there she was, slight frown on her face, handing me a peach, the color of sunrise. Looking back, she seemed like a woman who had seen things and held those things deep within the soft pillow of her belly. And me, just a kid who knew nothing of the heat that blankets a valley or the bordello fragrance of trees laden with treacly fruit. Just a kid she didn't know, from a place of canned plums and Dungeness crab, who can still feel the heft of her offering, its fuzzy skin on my lips, its Rubenesque plumpness, creak of syrup down throat and chin. A kid who ate her way to its red-edged center, then suckled and suckled on its dimpled, slick pit. And just as a note, I have a poem in this book. This is my first book that came out of Cirque Press. Mark and I were both published in Cirque through Cirque Press, so that's one of our connections together. And I printed the poem that it's called when it came out in this book. I'm not going to read it to you now, but it's called Post-Election. That was after Trump got elected the first time. And the new poem is Post-Election Again. And it's a postcard in there, and it's free for you guys. So please pick one up or pick two up and give it to somebody if you like it. Two more poems. You guys up for it? Okay. I know you've been sitting here a long time. Not too cold yet? Okay, I'll hurry. This poem, I just got word of a couple weeks ago. It's got picked up for publication in the Poetry Lighthouse. It's not there yet, but they're holding it, and they say it's going to be showing up. When I finished my second book, I really realized I wanted to write another collection of odes and praise poems. And so this is one of my ode poems. It's called Ode to the Emergency Room. Blossoms the color of eggplant spread like lichen on her belly. The skating rink room jabs icicles of light into her eyes. A plastic band is placed on her wrist, and when someone takes her hand, she notices her own ragged nails, half covered in chip pink polish. While behind her, someone starts filling her veins with another sort of heaven. Then, seawater, sky, the heartbreaking sun in her eyes, and eagles, hundreds of eagles, on a small tree on a small island, huddled together like these blue-capped servants, now tending the rosebush of her body. Before, she didn't notice all the different types of tulips, or that her neighbor Carlos limps, or how the words acorn, bluebell, wren, and willow were quietly vanishing from the mouths of children. Before, she didn't understand when a lover whispered, if he had two lives, he'd give her one. Just a footnote, the words vanishing quietly from the mouths of children came from a story I read in the BBC and subsequently a book I bought called The Lost Words. And some astute, probably librarian, caught that when the most recent edition, I believe it is, of the Oxford Junior Dictionary was published, 40 words got dropped. And they were common words, including the words I just read, bluebell, acorn, wren, and willow. And the words were replaced with things like voicemail, cut and paste, bullet point, blog. And when I read that, and then when I bought the book, I was just appalled, to be honest, that this is what adults are choosing to do to children. Keep the words in, for God's sake, and just add new ones. Okay, this is my last poem. I was asked, in Manzanita, there's the Hoffman Center of the Arts, is that? Okay. And they do a lot of variety of art activities, both, writing and, art projects. And they're doing a project this summer called Tiny, my mind is going. I've been here too long. Tiny galleries. Is it galleries? Tiny, what? I forgot it. Anyway, they have artists make these little tiny rooms and make little artists, and they sell them, and it's a fundraiser, and I think it's Tiny Galleries. And they asked a few poets to write poems for that particular event that starts June 28th, I think, and then goes through July if you happen to be down in Manzanita. And so I wrote this poem. Ladder. Parked on a patch of gravel in the weedy side yard, your cracked wood and peeling paint missed little. The howl of coyote, the sharp-shinned edge of seashell, the bunny that bolted from the hedge of pink blossoms. My boy Slim, with his toy camera, cavorting around the yard, and me watering the wisteria while talking on the phone, back turned from my baby as he bolted from berry to frog, foxglove to butterfly, from one breaking fever to another. And you, a steady witness to my real and invented distractions, my justified inability to climb your wobbly steps, first one foot and then another to open blue sky, sliver of pink on the horizon, pearly moon suspended like a holy candle, the honey-sweet air carrying the sounds of his high-pitched squeals, his Eucharist words, "Mama, Mama, look, look." Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Connie and Carey. Wasn't that great? That was super. We're going to take a short break. Now, in the room, both Connie and Carey have a couple books for sale. There's the postcards in there that are for free, so grab those. There's some almond some almond stuff. I can't remember what it is. Some cookies. Eat the cookies. And there's two lists. So if you want to be on the mailing list, you sign up on that one. And if you want to be on the open mic, you sign up on that one. We'll come back out here in a couple minutes and do the open mic.